Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Tuesday, August 11th, 2015, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's a look at what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, CBS News publishes a fake story about INFOWARS hiring militia for protection in Ferguson.
They call themselves Oath Keepers and say they were sent to Ferguson to protect people who work for a website called INFOWARS.
And a sneak preview of Project 22, a new powerful documentary created to end a tragic epidemic in America.
Suicide deaths outnumber combat deaths now for 4 years running.
1 in 6 Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans had post-traumatic stress disorder last year.
We have a record number of 22 servicemen and women committing suicide every single day in this country.
Plus, predictions of an economic collapse are closer than you might think. Are you ready for September? All that plus much more up next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Stocks have closed sharply lower today. The Dow has posted a 212-point drop after China roiled the global markets. Now, the Dow fell more than 200 points in the wake of a surprise devaluation of the yuan by China. China is the world's second largest economy. China's devaluation calls into question how the U.S. economy may fare as the Federal Reserve is aiming to start hiking interest rates for the first time since 2006, as signs of slowing growth abroad are persisting. So all of this is spelling a lot of trouble. Now, coming up later in the show, I'm going to be interviewing financial analyst Jeff Berwick. He is the chief editor of the Dollar Vigilante. We're going to get into this, as well as some of the other signs that you need to be watching for that there is a pending economic collapse coming. This, of course, is just one of those things. But basically, the fact is, the time for kicking the can down the road is catching up to the globalist bankers, the central banks. It's time for them to pay the piper, as they say. The day of reckoning is here. Now, that interview is coming up at the end of the show. But first, earlier today, CBS just decided they would go ahead and run with a fake news story about INFOWARS, basically saying that we were hiring the militia to protect our reporters out there. Mind you, Joe Biggs is a highly experienced combat veteran. However, he decided he needed to hire some heavily armed militia there to protect him and Jakari. So INFOWARS did not hire the Oath Keepers. These are friends of Joe Biggs. They all spoke to each other, despite the article claiming that they were hired for private security. It wasn't attributed to any source. I mean, the statement could have just come from the writer's imagination. The fact is they were not hired. They're not being paid to be out there with Joe Biggs and Jakari Jackson. Meanwhile, you've got reporters from CNN and CBS and all of these other places hiring their own armed security to protect them while they're out there covering Ferguson. So very hypocritical. But obviously what this is all about is an attempt to demonize INFOWARS again for linking us to what they call a militia group and a right-wing extremist group. And you can see the way the media is wanting to portray the Oath Keepers, not giving them any credit for what they actually do. You can see how they characterize them in the article. They say the Oath Keepers is a national group best known as supporters of the Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy during his 2014 dispute with the Bureau of Land Management. They get their name from the 3% of Americans who fought in the Revolutionary War. That's, I guess, the Idaho group. And they come from what was a general rise in sometimes violent anti-government activity in the inland Northwest. After a lull following the demise of the Idaho-based neo-Nazi Aryan nations in 2000, anti-government and white supremacist groups and individuals saw a dramatic uptick in activity and organization. Then they go on to say how they're once again showing up to a dispute in Montana over a mining claim. So really just painting the Oath Keepers as these right-wing extremists, anti-government. And so that's why they really want to point out how it's Alex Jones has linked these up and hired them to come out there heavily armed. And you can see how the corporate media is determined to portray the Oath Keepers and other people who are there in Ferguson, Missouri, helping residents and business owners protect their property. They're wanting to paint these people as racist outside agitators. Representative Emanuel Cleaver, who represents Missouri's 5th Congressional District, went on MSNBC this morning, and he characterized these people saying that they're people who have to be taken out. So it's not clear, was Cleaver talking about the criminals who were shooting at police or the Oath Keepers who arrived early Tuesday morning? Because the fact is, nobody was shot last night. No reporters were beaten and robbed, as one from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch was beaten and robbed. He's actually recuperating now in the hospital. But that didn't happen last night. So where is the connection? I hope people are seeing, where the connection is that there were armed Oath Keepers there. An armed society is a polite society, and that's where the connection lies. And it's really funny how things change from just 1 year. Despite the Oath Keepers, they're protecting Black-owned businesses from looters. We had one woman who she was thanking them, saying, please don't leave, please stay, please help, watch my shop. Now, of course, the Independent also went on to contribute to this race baiting, asking why only white people are allowed to carry guns. And that is a mischaracterization, because anyone is allowed to open carry in Missouri under the law, regardless of their skin color. But once again, they don't want you to know your rights. They don't want you to know that's your right as an American. We got D. Ray McKesson, who's one of the leaders there of Black Lives Matter, also openly being courted by Hillary Clinton. He's constantly on the divide and conquer tip, so everything he is putting out is all about divide and conquer. And so, of course, he retweeted a slur against Oath Keepers and InfoWars, basically saying, why is Oath Keepers, an organization that came to the aid of Ferguson residents last year, being demonized by the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as being demonized by the mainstream media? This is the same mainstream media that was celebrating rioting and looting last year, saying it was necessary. Now, what they're not going to show you is the videos that we have up at InfoWars, where you're actually seeing this positive dialogue, constructive, between the protesters and the Oath Keepers. Of course, you're not going to see that, because that, of course, is counter to their narrative.
But as long as we're divided as a community, we can't fix these problems. We've got to come together. We've got to stop the hate, watch each other's back, and come together and demand that these crooked politicians, career politicians, lying lawyers that are stealing from all of us, leave office and put some real people in. That's how we fix the problem. We come together and get rid of the career politicians and the lawyers.
Well, anger over the toxic mine spill has boiled over after it was revealed that the amount of toxic water that was released into the Animas River was actually 3 times the amount than what was previously stated. And officials are still unsure if there is a health threat to humans or animals. There was 3 million gallons of mine waste. It includes high concentrations of arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals. Now, EPA officials are saying it's going to be about August 17th until it's given the all clear. So that's just, 6 days away. Now, mind you, this 3 million gallons of mine waste has made it all the way to New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. And now local officials in the towns that are downstream from where these millions of gallons of toxic waste are spilling into, they're demanding answers about some possible long-term effects, threats to the water supply. And almost a week later now, members of the Navajo Nation are demanding that the federal government take action.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gina McCarthy, Administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. I am so proud to let you know that the United States has just taken a big step forward on climate change.
Do you still want to believe that the Environmental Protection Agency isn't a gigantic fleecing machine run by federally insulated morons?
Water to feed our lakes and streams. Rivers flowing through our communities to the sea. To drink, to grow, to live. Clean water.
Well, I'm sure it would be difficult to find anyone that agrees with you living off of the Colorado River.
We sincerely regret the impacts to the community, to the residents here, and also to all the tourists visitors you have in your community.
Last week, the Gold King mine vomited its poisonous brew of copper, zinc, acids, and heavy metals after workers supervised by EPA officials, rather than first draining or securing the sludge, opened up the passage, leading to 3 million gallons of toxic sludge spilling into a creek that carried it into the Animas River. From there, the discharge headed toward the Colorado River, which provides water to tens of millions of Westerners. Arsenic levels in the Durango area of the Animas River were, at their peak, 300 times the normal level, and lead was 3,500 times the normal level. On top of that monumental fail, it took the EPA over 24 hours to warn local residents that the Animas was poisoned. Now La Plata and Durango, Colorado have declared a state of emergency. Accidents happen? It would make sense that they would happen on a constant basis to a federal agency eaten up with incompetence and deviant behavior paid for by our tax dollars. It's become well known that an EPA regional office in Denver, Colorado sent out emails to all of its staff asking them to please stop defecating in the office hallways. An EPA attorney was sentenced to 32 months in prison after he defrauded the government out of $900,000 by falsely claiming his numerous absences were a result of a CIA gig he was doing on the side. And while the EPA clumsily drains 3 million gallons of wildlife-killing waste into one of the most pristine areas in the United States, how many of its employees were busy back at the home office watching pornography, as was discovered of an employee that viewed more than 7,000 pornographic files during duty hours? And if all of that sounds like juvenile and harmless idiocy, the EPA took their demoniacal abuse of power to another level when they conducted diesel exhaust experiments on 10-year-old children. In January, the Washington Post reported children as young as 10 years old had diesel exhaust sprayed directly into their noses in experiments conducted at the University of Southern California and the University of California. According to documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act by the website junkscience.com, the colleges received grants from the EPA to conduct the tests. Energy and Environmental Legal Institute attorney David Schneier said, not only has the EPA been caught violating the letter and the spirit of virtually every national, international code, law, and regulation for the protection of human subjects in medical experiments developed since World War II, but they have done so in shocking style, abusing the most vulnerable people of all, children. Our ancestors would have tarred and feathered the idiots that unleashed toxic death into the Animas River in Colorado. How many more disasters can our politically correct and subservient society endure as another federally funded alphabet agency with a long, dismal track record, ripe for either abolishment, major reform, or a future tool in the bureaucracy of a maturing tyranny, destroys another segment of the American dream? John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
Jakari Jackson reporting for INFOWARS.com. What you're looking at right now, if you guys recall, last November, myself and Joe Biggs were out in Ferguson, Missouri, and this building was actually on fire. Now you can see it has been leveled to the ground. And as we look around, actually, if you turn the camera right here, you can see a gentleman actually barricading a beauty salon. If you guys recall, last time we were here in November, this beauty salon was under attack, and we had the chance to speak to one of the owners, and she said, you know, we didn't board up our building last time because we were hoping that the community would come out and show their support in a positive way and bypass us, but unfortunately that was not the case. And now, as I always talk about when I mention Ferguson, Missouri, the majority of the people out here are peaceful people. It is a violent minority who do the actions that lead to things such as this. So we will continue to be out here and to document the things that are going on, and hopefully, if to anybody who wants to document our actions, I'm going to switch gears for a second. Get your damn story straight. We did not pay the Oath Keepers anything. I don't know where that came from. Myself and Joe Biggs talked to multiple people last night. Some of them had cameras, some of them didn't. We told them in no uncertain terms that we did not pay the Oath Keepers anything. These were just good-hearted people. We were in contact with them. They said, hey, we can come out there and watch your back. And then they came out and watched our backs. So to anybody who is fabricating news and saying that these guys are out here menacing the people of Ferguson, Missouri, you can go to INFOWARS.com. You can go to the Alex Jones channel on YouTube, and you can see the Oath Keepers talking to people, talking peacefully about all manner of topics, including the Second Amendment, even very benign things such as taxes. So if you're going to report on INFOWARS.com, get your story straight. Jakari Jackson, you can find more reports on the Alex Jones channel on YouTube.
Authoritarians merely want obedience, while totalitarians, whose rule is rooted in an ideology, want obedience and conversion. The authoritarians are the guys in charge who want to stay in charge, and they don't much care about you or what you're doing, so long as you stay out of their way. Live or die, it's all same to the regime. Totalitarians are a different breed. These are the people who have a plan, who think they see the future more clearly than you, or who are convinced they grasp reality in a way that you do not. They don't serve themselves, they serve history, or the people, or the idea, or some other ideological totem that justifies their actions. They want obedience, of course, but even more, they want their rule and their belief system to be accepted and self-sustaining. And the only way to achieve that is to create a new society of people who share those beliefs, even if it means bludgeoning every last citizen into enlightenment. That's what makes totalitarians different and more dangerous. They are totalistic in the sense they demand a complete reorientation of the individual to the state and its ideological ends. Every person who harbors a secret objection, or even so much as a doubt, is a danger to the future of the whole project. And so the regime compels its subjects not only to obey, but to believe. Joining me now is Stan Mayer. He is a Marine and combat wounded veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, currently living here in Austin, Texas. Stan will be hosting a screening of Project 22 here tomorrow night. This film was created by your close personal friends and fellow veterans in an effort to help, bring some hope and stop this suicide epidemic. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
How did you get involved with Project 22?
I got involved with Project 22 as a result of a personal experience with veteran suicide. I lost my best friend as a casualty of this epidemic that's plagued the veteran population since we've returned. And the result of that was me reaching out to Doc and Dan as they were filming Project 22 and saying, hey, what you're doing is a pretty amazing thing. How do I get involved? Well, they're in the midst of filming that. And it wasn't until afterwards that we actually connected personally and met with each other. Now I'm trying to proliferate the word by encouraging people to host screenings throughout the country, different states, and this has been going on all over the place. I have a screening that's about to be hosted in Hawaii right now, which is good.
Mm-hmm. And so the film was made by Doc and Dan, two combat veterans. What was the defining moment for them where they said, you know what, enough is enough, we've got to do something? And then they set about on the 6,500-mile cross-country journey.
So Doc and Dan had been friends for a while. At the time, I believe they were in New York, and they were both going through their own personal struggles with this. The reality is that veterans are trained, soldiers, Marines, whatever, servicemen are trained for years to prepare them for battle. And they go overseas and they fight and they experience all these things. There's no reason that they're not capable of reintegrating back home when they return. But we get a 3, maybe 7-day separation course, and we're on our way when we get out of the military. And this is why there's such a disconnect with the veterans feeling isolated, not able to reintegrate. We could do a much better job at doing that. What inspired Doc and Dan to do this, after their own personal struggles with this situation, they made the phone call, talked to each other and said, hey man, this is insane. We have to do something, anything. Nobody's really taking action. So they thought that if they could ride across the country and film this and shove this film into as many people's faces as they could possibly present it to, that they could at least get people talking about it. And it was to raise awareness. But the beauty of what this film actually did, now that we've been screening it throughout the country, is that it's beginning a dialogue between family members and veterans, the community. People are completely unrelated to the veteran population. You don't have a friend that was in the war. You don't have a father that served. Doesn't matter. People are seeing that there is a, they're dispelling the idea that every veteran that comes home that has PTS or TBI or has experienced war is now dysfunctional, not a functional member of society. But what it comes down to is that veterans are actually highly functional members of society, some of the most functional members of society, because they have this great wealth of wisdom and knowledge that comes from where they've been. And we're watching this dialogue begin, and it's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is the general response from veterans, their family members alike? And I know that the film was able to kind of expose a lot of different therapies that veterans are engaging in, rather than just, I think the initial response from the VA is to kind of give them the pills to help them cope, and obviously that might not be effective.
Yeah, it's, I love this because this film is exposing a lot of things. And one of the things they'll show in the film are veterans having sailing clinics, and veterans doing yoga, and veterans throwing clay and making pottery, which is great. Most veterans are going to say, no, thank you. I'm going to sit at home and play video games, which is fine. You can do whatever you want. The point isn't that you need to go sailing to not kill yourself. The point is that you need to reach out. You need to get with people. You need to start a dialogue. Have a buddy that calls you. And at the very end of the film, a point is made that says, pick up the phone. It's that easy. And that doesn't mean me as, Marine Stan has to call my, Marine Dan and say, hey man, are you doing okay tonight? But Leanne, call me anytime and see how we're doing, and reaching out to the community and linking that up.
Connecting like that. Well, it's definitely a very important project. You're going to be screening Project 22 here in Austin, Texas, like I said, Wednesday night. To reserve a seat to that, you're going to go to tug.com. You'll select Project 22. There will be a link there. You can purchase tickets for the Austin screening, but you can also see all of the other screenings that are going to be taking place all throughout the United States. But there's something else that's really important with this film, is that it is crowd-sourced screening. So how can people request Project 22 in their city?
So it's actually really simple. A lot of people see that and they're like daunted by it. Like host a screening of a film and have to go out and talk to the theaters. You actually have nothing to do with the theater whatsoever. It's you simply you can go on the Medicinal Missions website, and there's the drop box that says Project 22, and you can request a screening through TUG. And when you do that, a liaison that handles everything, it just says, hey, I want to show this movie in Austin, Texas. And they say, hey, these theaters are available. What night do you want? This night. Yeah. And then they say, all right, tickets will be on sale through the website. Advertise on Facebook, talk to your friends, reach out, VFWs, whatever you can. It doesn't matter, however you can get people involved, and then they purchase tickets through the website. And if they meet the threshold of ticket sales, then they'll put the show on. If they don't, then the show doesn't go on.
Right, so it's all about getting the word out. Well, just the closing word, why is it important for people to see this film?
This film is important because it's, like I said, it's beginning that dialogue, it's bridging this gap, it's dissolving the isolation that occurs, that is the reason that we have guys that are, they're trapped in their own experiences, and they don't, we have alphas that don't want to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And it's not asking for help, it's bringing everyone back together. And this film is doing that. Yeah, saving lives and making sure you can reach tomorrow's 22. It's the tagline in the film. Well, stick around, because coming up, we're going to play a very important message from Alex Jones. He wants to break down the mystery behind the giant statue of Hercules inside the Vatican.
Earlier in the broadcast, I talked about the Garth Brooks song where he talks about sometimes God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. And I think back in my life how many times I wanted something, how many times I prayed about something, and what I wanted in my heart didn't happen, and it turned out that it was a great thing that it didn't happen. Because when one door shuts, a lot of other doors open. And sure, all these things I'm saying are cliches because they're so true. So I traveled to Rome, was there 5 days with our reporters. to research just how bad the immigrant waves into the country are, just how serious the infrastructure problems are, and to see just how draconian EU tyranny was. And we're making a documentary on that subject. We also went to Spain. But when you talk about sometimes God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers, I don't literally think this story is true. That is, I don't think Zeus was real or that the archetype of Hercules was real. But it is a good parallel to understand how the real world works, that when one door closes, another opens. Now, this part of the story is true. There was a pantheon of Hercules and his 99, statues of each of them at the temple to Hercules. And in Roman times, the huge bronze statue of Hercules, I stood below it, it's got to be about 40 feet tall, was struck by lightning during a storm and knocked over. The Romans thought this was a sign. They were obsessed with tea leaves and reading the entrails of animals and the stars, that the king of the gods, Zeus, was angry with Hercules and had hit him with this bolt of lightning, because Zeus is the god of lightning. And, of course, that's the name of the Greek god of lightning, the king of the gods. It's the same god under the Romans, but called Jupiter. So Jupiter was angry and had killed Hercules in figure, because they believed the statues were actually inhabited by the spirit of the god, or at least an aspect of the god. They have the temple to Mars there across the street from the Roman Forum, but it's Mars Vengeance, built by the adopted son of Julius Caesar I, after he pledged to wipe out all those that killed his father. When the last one was killed, he built this temple. But I digress. Then, hundreds of years later, when barbarians from the north, Visigoths, came in and sacked Rome and melted down the bronze statues into weapons, the only statue they couldn't find was Hercules, because they believed Hercules had been basically killed by Zeus, and so the Romans had buried him under the temple floor right where he'd fallen. So all the other 99 of Hercules were melted down, and their physical embodiment was destroyed. So was it a curse from Jupiter? Was it a curse from Zeus in the Greek to strike him with lightning and knock him down, knowing the Romans would then bury him, and then a few hundred years later he wouldn't be destroyed? Or was it a blessing so that he now stands in the center of the Vatican Museum surrounded by all this other incredible art? That is an allegory or a parable of sometimes curses are actually blessings and blessings are actually curses. You've just got to have the perspective in time and realize that sometimes Jupiter works in mysterious ways. And before the New York Times runs with a story saying I believe in Greek and Roman gods, I don't. But I believe in the aspects of those gods as archetypes. We can certainly learn from it. And I think the Romans had a lot more common sense than a lot of our leaders today. And I was drawn to the Roman art. I was repulsed by the Vatican art. And the Vatican itself at St. Peter's Basilica looked like a nightmare giant Las Vegas casino on steroids. It had one of the worst vibes I've ever felt. Worse vibe than even the Roman Colosseum. That's just my gut response. Maybe it's because Pope Francis, the world government globalist, is now in control, or maybe it always felt like that.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
It is a big idea, a new world order,
A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
So that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international order.
The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
But today, with Asia already outproducing Europe, India and China are clearly becoming part of our new order.
We are now facing a common challenge. And the challenge is how to build a world order for the first time in history on a global basis.
So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And the president outlined his vision of a new world order in which the U.S. would participate fully.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
So I see a world order in the future with a multipolar world order.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation.
But in a globalized economy, we are going to have to take global responsibilities, and there is going to have to be some semblance of global governance.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period.
And I strongly believe India will be a central actor in the new world order.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society.
2009 is also the first year of global governance with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet.
New World Order is the headline in the Globe and Mail in Canada.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
Of course we are. We are absolutely slaves to central banks.
We have heard a lot about a pending economic crisis. Well, my guest today has a video that's gone viral where he discusses some of the signs that we should be watching for to really kind of indicate when something big is about to happen. He's going to break down some of these signs as well as give you some suggestions how to protect yourself from this coming economic collapse. All right, joining me now, Jeff Berwick. He is the chief editor of the Dollar Vigilante, world famous financial analyst. I know you've got, you're living there in beautiful Acapulco. We can see that behind you. Jeff, you started Canada's largest financial website, stockhouse.com, in 1994, the Dollar Vigilante in 2010. We brought you on the show today because you recently produced a video. It's gone viral. It's called Shemitah Exposed, Financial Crisis Planned for September 2015. So tell us, what is the Shemitah exactly and why should we be concerned about it?
of course. First of all, thank you very much, Leanne. It's a real pleasure to be on with you. A big fan of InfoWars. As far as the Shemitah goes, I started something called the Dollar Vigilante in 2010, expecting a financial and a collapse of the U.S. dollar within 5 to 10 years. And we're now 5 years in, and I'm starting to see a lot of the first signs of this beginning to happen. But it wasn't until recently that I came across something called the Shemitah after reading a book by Jonathan Cahn called The Harbinger. And it really seemed to show that every 7 years, which is the Shemitah, so the Shemitah is a Judaic religion, something in the Judaic religion where every 7 years they wash away all debts, and they that's essentially what they say in their religion. And actually, if you look at the exact date of the end of the Shemitah year every 7 years, it seems like some sort of major market or financial calamity seems to happen, and this is what I started to look into. So I look back at the last one, which was in 2008, which was September 29th. That was the last major market crisis collapse, and on that day, the market fell 777 points. Then you go back 7 years prior to that was September 17th, 2001. That was the exact end date of the Shemitah in 2001, and the markets, that was the first day that the U.S. stock markets opened after 9/11, and the markets fell 7% on that day. You can keep going back every 7 years. 1994 was the bond market massacre. Of course, 1987 was Black Monday. These things seem to have some sort of reason or some sort of a plan to them, or at least the markets seem to adhere to it. So I've been looking at this year coming up. We're actually in a Shemitah year right now, and it actually ends on September 13th of this year. So I'm looking at the September 13th date. And when I started looking into that date, I started to realize there's a lot of things happening all around that date of major significance, including, as you guys know very well, I follow your coverage of Jade Helm very much. That ends on September 15th, so that's a very interesting date. September 15th is also the 70th UN Jubilee session, where world leaders will be around the world, including the Pope in New York on that day. And then the day after that, the Federal Reserve is having a meeting where they may increase interest rates by 0.25%, which alone can totally destroy this entire debt-based financial and economic system.
And it's interesting that it's being called the Jubilee, because isn't this the Jubilee year as well?
Yes, that's right. So every 50 years, so every seven Shemitahs, which is 49, you have to be good at math or at least know football. That's how I do my sevens. So every 49 years, after that year, every 50th year is called the Jubilee. The last one was in 1967, and that was when Israel won the I forget how many days it was, 5-day war or 6-day war, I believe it was called. And then before that was when the British Empire took over Israel. And so on the Jubilee year, according to Jewish religion, is something the Jewish people are supposed to get back their land that was taken away from them. So I'm also watching that for next year, because we're also seeing in the UN they're going to be voting on a Palestinian state in this September. So there's a lot going on that is all tied into this Shemitah.
Wow, that's very interesting. Now, do you think that this Shemitah cycle could be exploited by criminal elements within the banking elite?
Well, the banking elite are criminal elements to start with, of course, and the government as well. The governments and central banks are criminal entities. They're anti-freedom, evil, anti-human organizations. And, yeah, of course, they sort of plan these things out. If you look back throughout history, even the Great Depression, the main market drop during the Great Depression was during the Shemitah year in 1931-32, and they planned that out. That's actually been fairly proven now, that they actually planned to take away liquidity from the market, get the market to go down massively, and then buy up all the stock. I don't know if that's what they're doing this time, because a lot's changed since 1930, but there definitely seems to be something planned for this September or maybe October.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of different signs and people kind of predicting a lot of different things happening here this fall. So what happens if these signs are accurate?
Well, there's really no way to know. There's so many things going on. I've been predicting that we're going to see a major market crisis, collapse, or end of the monetary system as we know it anyway in the next couple of years. So even if nothing major happens in the September, October, I still recommend to people to be very safe, to follow a lot of the advice that we're giving at the Dollar Vigilante, and to start to get out of the financial system and monetary systems, because even if it doesn't happen this fall, it's going to happen in the next few years, almost baked in the cake.
Right. I was kind of researching that myself. It does sort of go in cycles. It's the real estate cycle, and then I guess the bond market or something. What's the next card to fall?
Well, what you're talking about are bubbles that are created by central bank money printing. So the tech bubble was one. After the tech bubble collapsed, Paul Krugman called for a housing bubble, and he got it. That collapsed in 2007. That's now turned into a government debt bubble, which is absolutely massive, which will collapse at some point and take down the entire financial, monetary, and economic system with it. And that will happen in the next few years. So people who are paying attention to what's going on in Greece, if you live in the U.S., that's going to happen in the U.S. It's actually going to be even worse in the U.S. So I advise people to prepare now.
Yeah, we're already starting to see that, I guess, happen in Puerto Rico. But Obama says there's not going to be any Greece-style bailout for Puerto Rico. So what are some things that you suggest for people to start doing now?
Well, I've been recommending all along to get out of the financial system as much as possible. Get your money outside of the U.S. if possible. We have a lot of that sort of information at thedollarvigilante.com. Get into precious metals, hard assets, anything that Janet Yellen can't counterfeit or turn into worthlessness, which she's going to do with the U.S. dollar, is a good idea.
And so what do you think about everything that's going on with China?
Well, I think China is really just a precursor to what we're going to be seeing globally. If you look back at 2007, the last time there was a major Chinese stock market collapse was in 2007, and of course 2008 is when it all came over in contagion to the U.S. I think the exact same thing's happening right now. It almost looks like a exact repeat of 2007 right now, with oil collapsing, Chinese stock market collapsing, Greece again having problems. They always have problems, that's normal. And commodities going down. Even right now we're seeing, I think, the pre-shocks, the pre-tremors of a major market crisis coming in the fall. We're seeing the Dow, it was down 7 days in a row. It's down big again today. I think these are just the pre-shocks towards a major crisis.
And so do you think that those are the little small signs, or is there one big thing that it's going to signal to you like this is it?
No, there's no one big thing. There's thousands of black swans in the sky as far as I can tell, and there's so many black swans in the sky that it's almost becoming an eclipse, in my opinion. Anything can set it off. The Arab Spring was set off by just one person in a market in Tunisia lighting himself on fire because he couldn't afford to live anymore. That set off the entire Arab Spring. So you have no way to know what's going to set it off, but something's going to happen. If not this fall, soon enough that I'd rather be a year early than a day too late in this sort of event.
Yeah, absolutely. I've already kind of started arranging some of those things myself. Well, Jeff Berwick, the chief editor of Dollar Vigilante, so people can find more information there and find some ways that they can actually move their money around and get out of the dollar market here, right?
Yes, absolutely. Just go to dollarvigilante.com, put your email in, and we'll send you information every day. Or if you want to check out our viral video on surviving Shemitah, just go to surviveshemitah.com.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Thank you, Liam. My pleasure.
That's it for the show tonight. Thank you.